The text you are about to listen to, by James Allen, was written in the style of its time. That is to say, in somewhat archaic English, and written by men for men. But, as Allen himself has asserted, the teachings are meant for mankind, not just for men. The material is utterly profound and life-changing. So we have taken the liberty of adapting and updating the English to make it more neutral and accessible to modern generations, male and female alike, without changing the meaning or intention of the text, and without making any copyright claims regarding our versions of his sublime works. The original versions can be found freely available online in the public domain for those who might prefer to read them in their original form. Thank you, and bless you. Foundation Stones to Happiness and Success by James Allen. Foreword. How do you begin the building of a house? You first secure a plan of the proposed structure, and then proceed to build according to the plan, scrupulously following it in every detail, beginning with the foundation. Should you neglect the beginning on a mathematical plan, your labor would be wasted, and your building, should it reach completion without tumbling to pieces, would be insecure and worthless. The same law holds good in any important work. The right beginning and the first essential is a definite mental plan on which to build. Nature will have no careless work, no sloppiness, and she annihilates confusion, or rather, confusion is in itself annihilated. Order, definiteness, purpose eternally prevail, and those who in their operations ignore these mathematical elements at once deprive themselves of sustainability, completeness, happiness, and success. James Allen. Chapter 1. Right Principles. It is wise to know what comes first, and what to do first. To begin anything in the middle or at the end is to make a muddle of it. The athlete who began by breaking the tape would not receive the prize. You must begin by facing the starter and toeing the mark, and even then a good start is important if you are to win. The pupil doesn't begin with algebra and literature, but with counting and ABC. As it is in life, the business owners who begin at the bottom achieve the more enduring success, and the religious men and women who reach the highest heights of spiritual knowledge and wisdom are they who have stooped to serve a patient apprenticeship to the humbler tasks and have not rejected the common experiences of humanity or overlooked the lessons to be learned from them. The first things in a sound life, and therefore in a truly happy and successful life, are right principles. Without right principles to begin with, there will be wrong practices to follow with, and a bungled and wretched life to end with. All the infinite variety of calculations which formulate the commerce and science of the world come out of the 10 numbers. All of the hundreds of thousands of books which constitute the literature of the world, and perpetuate its thought and genius, are built up from the 26 letters. The greatest astronomer can't ignore the 10 simple numbers. The profoundest genius can't dispense with the 26 simple characters. The fundamentals in all things are few and simple, yet without them there is no knowledge and no achievement. The fundamentals, the basic principles in life, or true living, are also few and simple, and to learn them thoroughly and to study how to apply them to all the details of life is to avoid confusion and to secure a substantial foundation for the orderly building up of an invincible character and a lasting success, and to succeed in comprehending those principles in their innumerable ramifications in the labyrinth of conduct is to become a master of life. The first principles in life are principles of conduct. To name them is easy. As mere words they are on all men's lips, but as fixed sources of action, admitting of no compromise, few have learned them. In this short talk, I will deal with only 5 of these principles. These 5 are among the simplest of the root principles of life, but they are those that come nearest to the everyday life, for they touch the artisan, the businessman, the householder, the citizen at every point. Not one of them can be abandoned without severe cost, and those who perfect themselves in their application will rise superior to many of the troubles and failures of life, and will come into these springs and currents of thought which flow harmoniously towards enduring success. The first of these principles is duty. A cliched word, I know, but it contains a rare jewel for those who will seek it by diligent application. The principle of duty means strict dedication to your own business, and just as strict non-interference in other people's business. Those who are continually instructing others, offering unsolicited advice on how to manage their affairs, are the ones who most mismanage their own affairs. Duty also means undivided attention to the matter at hand, intelligent, single-pointed concentration of the mind on the work to be done. It includes all that is meant by thoroughness, exactness, and efficiency. The details of duties differ with individuals, and each of you should know your own duty better than you know your neighbour's, and better than your neighbour knows theirs. But although the working details differ, the principle is always the same. Who has mastered the demands of duty? Honesty is the next principle. It means not cheating or overcharging another. It involves the absence of all trickery, lying, and deception by word, look, or gesture. It includes sincerity, the saying what you mean and the meaning what you say. It scorns cringing policy and shining compliment. It builds up good reputations, and good reputations build up good businesses, and bright joy accompanies well-earned success. Who has scaled the heights of honesty? Economy is the third principle. The conservation of one's financial resources is simply the doorway leading towards the more spacious residence of true economy. It means, as well, the management of one's physical vitality and mental resources. It demands the conservation of energy by the avoidance of draining self-indulgences and sensual habits. It holds for its practitioner strength, endurance, vigilance, and capacity to achieve. It bestows great power on those who learn it well. Who has realized the supreme strength of economy? Altruism follows economy. It is not opposed to it. Only the man of economy can afford to be generous. As a spendthrift, whether in money, vitality, or mental energy, you have wasted so much on your own miserable pleasures as to have none left to give to others. The giving of money is the smallest part of altruism. There is the giving of thought and deeds and sympathy, the bestowing of goodwill, being generous towards competitors and opponents. It's a principle that brings about a noble, far-reaching influence. It brings loving friends and staunch companions, and is the enemy of loneliness and despair. Who has measured the breadth of altruism? Self-control is the last of these 5 principles, yet the most important. Its neglect is the cause of great misery, innumerable failures, and tens of thousands of financial, physical, and mental wrecks. Show me the business owner who loses their temper with a customer over some trivial matter, and I will show you one who, by that condition of mind, is doomed to failure. If all men and women practiced even the initial stages of self-control, anger, with its consuming and destroying fire, would be unknown. The lessons of patience, purity, gentleness, kindness, and steadfastness, which are contained in the principle of self-control, are slowly learned by men and women. Yet until they are truly learned, your character and success are uncertain and insecure. Where are those who have perfected themselves in self-control? Wherever they are masters indeed. The 5 principles are 5 practices, 5 avenues to achievement, and 5 sources of knowledge. It's an old saying and a good rule that practice makes perfect. And you who would make your own wisdom, which is inherent in those principles, must not simply have them on your lips, they must be established in your heart. To know them and to receive what they alone can bring, you must do them and give them out in your actions. Chapter 2. Sound Methods. From the 5 foregoing right principles, when they are truly apprehended and practiced, will issue sound methods. Right principles are manifested in harmonious action, and method is to life what law is to the universe. Everywhere in the universe there is the harmonious adjustment of parts, and it is this symmetry and harmony that reveals a cosmos, as distinguished from chaos. So in human life, the difference between a true life and a false life, between one purposeful and effective and one purposeless and weak, is one of method. The false life is an incoherent jumble of thoughts, passions, and actions. The true life is an orderly adjustment of all its parts. It's all the difference between a mass of lumber and a smoothly working, efficient machine. A piece of machinery in perfect working order is not only a useful, but an admirable and attractive thing. But when its parts are all out of gear and refuse to be readjusted, its usefulness and attractiveness are gone, and it's thrown onto the scrap heap. Likewise, a life perfectly adjusted in all its parts so as to achieve the highest point of efficiency is not only a powerful life, but an excellent and beautiful thing. Whereas a life confused, inconsistent, and discordant is a deplorable exhibition of wasted energy. If a life is to be truly lived, method must enter into and regulate every detail of it, as it enters and regulates every detail of the wondrous universe of which we form a part. One of the distinguishing differences between the wise and the foolish is that the wise pay careful attention to the smallest things, while the foolish gloss over them or neglect them altogether. Wisdom consists in maintaining things in their right relations, in keeping all things, the smallest as well as the greatest, in their proper places and times. To violate order is to produce confusion and discord, and unhappiness is but another name for discord. The good business owner knows that system is 3 parts of success, and that disorder means failure. The wise know that disciplined, methodical living is 3 parts of happiness, and that looseness means misery. What is a fool but one who thinks carelessly, acts rashly, and lives loosely? And what is a wise one but one who thinks carefully, acts calmly, and lives consistently? The true method does not end with the orderly arrangement of the material things and external relations of life. This is but its beginning. It enters into the adjustment of the mind, the discipline of the passions, the elimination and choice of words in speech, the logical arrangement of the thoughts, and the selection of right actions. To achieve a life rendered sound, successful, and sweet by the pursuance of sound methods, one must begin not by neglect of the little everyday things, but by diligent attention to them. So the hour of rising is important, and its regularity and consistency significant, as also are the timing of going to bed to rest, and the number of hours given to sleep. Between the regularity and irregularity of meals, and the care and carelessness with which they are eaten, is all the difference between a good and bad digestion, with all that this applies, and an irritable or comfortable frame of mind, with its train of good or bad consequences. For, attaching to these meal times and meal ways are matters of both physiological and psychological significance. The due division of hours for work and for play, not confusing the two, the orderly fitting in of all the details of one's business, times for solitude, for silent thought and for effective action, for eating and for abstinence. All these things must have their lawful place in the life of those whose daily round is to proceed with the minimum degree of friction, who are to get the most of usefulness, influence, and joy out of life. But all this is but the beginning of that comprehensive method which embraces the whole life and being. When this smooth order and logical consistency is extended to the words and actions, to the thoughts and desires, then wisdom emerges from foolishness, and out of weakness comes power sublime. When you so order your mind as to produce a beautiful, working harmony between all its parts, then you reach the highest wisdom, the highest efficiency, and the highest happiness. But this is the end, and those of you who would reach the end must begin at the beginning. You must put in order and render logical and smooth the smallest details of your life, proceeding step by step towards the finished accomplishment. But each step will yield its own particular measure of strength and gladness. To sum up, method produces that smoothness which goes with strength and efficiency. Discipline is method applied to the mind. It produces that calmness which goes with power and happiness. Method is working by rule. Discipline is living by rule. But working and living are not separate. They are but two aspects of character, of life. Therefore, be precise in work, be accurate in speech, be wise in thought. Between these and slovenliness, inaccuracy and confusion, is the difference between success and failure, music and discord, happiness and misery. The adoption of sound methods of working, acting, thinking, in a word, of living, is the surest and safest foundation for sound health, sound success, and sound peace of mind. The foundation of unsound methods will be found to be unstable and to yield fear and unrest even while it appears to succeed, and when its time of failure comes, it is grievous indeed. Chapter 3. True Actions. Following after right principles and methods come true actions. One who is striving to grasp true principles and work with sound methods will soon come to perceive that details of conduct cannot be overlooked. That, indeed, those details are fundamentally distinctive or creative according to their nature, and are, therefore, of deep significance and comprehensive importance. And this perception and knowledge of the nature and power of passing actions will gradually open and grow within you as an added vision, a new revelation. As you acquire this insight, your progress will be more rapid, your pathway in life more sure, your days more serene and peaceful, and in all things you will go the true and direct way, unswayed and untroubled by the external forces that play around and about you. Not that you will be indifferent to the welfare and happiness of those about you, that is quite another thing, but you will be indifferent to their opinions, to their ignorance, to their ungoverned passions. By true actions, indeed, is meant acting rightly towards others, and, as a right doer, you know that actions in accordance with truth are but for the happiness of those about you, and you will do them even though an occasion may arise when someone near to you may advise or implore you to do otherwise. True actions may easily be distinguished from false by all who wish so to distinguish, in order that they may avoid false action and adopt true. As in the material world we distinguish things by their form, colour, size, etc., choosing those things which we require and putting aside those things which are not useful to us. So in the spiritual world of deeds, we can distinguish between those that are bad and those that are good by their nature, their intention, and their effect, and can choose and adopt those that are good and ignore those that are bad. In all forms of progress, avoidance of the bad always precedes acceptance and knowledge of the good. Just as a child at school learns to do its lessons right by having repeatedly pointed out to it how it has done them wrong. If you don't know what is wrong and how to avoid it, how can you know what is right and how to practice it? Bad or untrue actions are those that spring from a consideration of one's own happiness only, and ignore the happiness of others, that arise in violent disturbances of the mind and unlawful desires, or that call for concealment in order to avoid undesirable complications. Good or true actions are those that spring from a consideration for others, that may arise in calm reason and harmonious thought, framed on moral principles, or that will not involve you in shameful consequences if brought into the full light of day. As a right doer, you will avoid those acts of personal pleasure and gratification, which by their nature bring annoyance, pain, or suffering to others, no matter how insignificant those actions may appear to be. You will begin by putting these away. You will gain a knowledge of the unselfish and true by first sacrificing the selfish and untrue. You will learn to not speak or act in anger or envy or resentment, but will study how to control your mind and will restore it to calmness before acting. And, most important of all, you will avoid, as you would the drinking of a deadly poison, those acts of trickery, deceit, and double-dealing, in order to gain some personal profit or advantage, and which lead, sooner or later, to exposure and shame for the doer of them. If you are prompted to do a thing that you would need to hide or disguise, and which you would not lawfully and frankly defend it if it were examined by a witness, you should know by that it is a wrong, ignorant act, and is therefore to be abandoned without giving it a second thought. The carrying out of this principle of honesty and sincerity of action, too, will further lead you into such a path of thoughtfulness in right doing, as will enable you to avoid doing those things which would involve you in the deceptive practices of other people. Before signing papers or entering into verbal or written arrangements, or engaging yourself to others in any way at their request, particularly if they are strangers, you will first inquire into the nature of the work or undertaking, and so, enlightened, you will know exactly what to do, and will be fully aware of the implications of your action. To the right doer, thoughtlessness is a crime. Thousands of actions done with good intent lead to disastrous consequences because they are acts of thoughtlessness. And it's well said that the way to hell is paved with good intentions. As a being of true actions, you are, above all things, thoughtful. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. The term thoughtlessness covers a wide field in the realm of deeds. It is only by increasing in thoughtfulness that a man can come to understand the nature of actions, and can, thereby, acquire the power of always doing that which is right. It is impossible for a man to be thoughtful and act foolishly. Thoughtfulness embraces wisdom. It is not enough that an action is prompted by a good impulse or intention. It must arise in thoughtful consideration if it is to be a true action. And if you wish to be permanently happy in yourself and a power for good to others, you must concern yourself only with true actions. I did it with the best of intentions is a poor excuse if you have thoughtlessly involved yourself in the wrongdoing of others. Your bitter experience should teach you to act more thoughtfully in the future. True actions can only spring from a true mind, and therefore, while you are learning to distinguish and choose between the false and the true, you are correcting and perfecting your mind, and are thereby rendering it more harmonious and felicitous, more efficient and powerful. As you acquire the inner eye to clearly distinguish the right in all the details of life, and the faith and knowledge to do it, you will realize that you are building the house of your character and life upon a rock which the winds of failure and the storms of persecution can never undermine. Chapter 4. True Speech. Truth is known by practice only. Without sincerity there can be no knowledge of truth, and true speech is the beginning of all sincerity. Truth, in all its native beauty and original simplicity, consists in abandoning and not doing all those things which are untrue, and in embracing and doing all those things which are true. True speech is therefore one of the elementary beginnings in the life of truth. Falsehood and all forms of deception, slander and all forms of ignorant speaking, these must be totally abandoned and abolished before the mind can receive even a small degree of spiritual enlightenment. Liars and slanderers are lost in darkness. So deep is their darkness that they can't distinguish between that which is good and that which is wicked, and they persuade themselves that their lying and ignorant speaking is necessary and good, that they are thereby protecting themselves and other people. As a student of higher things, look to yourself and beware of self-delusion. If you are given to uttering words that deceive or to speaking ill of others, if you speak in insincerity, envy, or malice, then you have not yet begun to study higher things. You may be studying metaphysics, or miracles, or psychic phenomena, or astral wonders. You may be studying how to confer with invisible beings, to travel invisibly during sleep, or to produce curious phenomena. You may even study spirituality theoretically and as a mere book study. But if you are a deceiver and a backbiter, the higher life is hidden from you. For these are the higher things: uprightness, sincerity, innocence, purity, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, humility, patience, pity, sympathy, self-sacrifice, joy, goodwill, and love. And you who would study them, know them, and make them your own, must practice them. There is no other way. Lying and ignorant speaking belong to the lowest forms of spiritual ignorance, and there can be no such thing as spiritual enlightenment while they are practiced. Their parents are selfishness and hatred. Slander is similar to lying, but it's even more subtle, as it's frequently associated with indignation, and by more successfully imitating the appearance of truth, it misleads many who would not tell a deliberate lie. Because there are two sides to slander. There is the deliberate repeating of it, and there is the listening to it and acting upon it. The slanderer would be powerless without a listener. Malicious words require an ear that is receptive to ignorance, in which they may fall before they can flourish. Therefore, those of you who listen to a slanderer, who believe it, and allow yourself to be influenced against the person whose character and reputation are defamed, are in the same position as the one who presented or repeated the malicious report. The malicious speaker is a positive slanderer. The malicious listener is a passive slanderer. The two are cooperators in the propagation of ignorance. Slander is a common vice and a dark and deadly one. A malicious report begins in ignorance and pursues its blind way in darkness. It generally comes from a misunderstanding. Someone feels that he or she has been badly treated and, filled with indignation and resentment, unburdens themselves to their friends and others in vehement language, exaggerating the enormity of the supposed offense on account of the feeling of injury which they are possessed by. They are listened to and sympathized with. The listeners, without hearing the other person's version of what has taken place, and on no other proof than the violent words of an angry man or woman, become cold in their attitude towards the one spoken against, and repeat to others what they've been told. And as such repetition is always more or less inaccurate, a distorted and altogether untrue report is soon passing from mouth to mouth. It is because slander is such a common vice that it can work the suffering and injury that it does. It is because so many, not deliberate wrongdoers and unconscious of the nature of the ignorance into which they fall so easily, are ready to allow themselves to be influenced against one whom they have until now regarded as honorable, that a malicious report can do its deadly work. Yet its work is only amongst those who have not altogether acquired the virtue of true speech, the cause of which is a truth-loving mind. When one who has not entirely freed themselves from repeating or believing a malicious report about another hears of a malicious report about themselves, their mind becomes aflame and burning with resentment, their sleep is broken, and their peace of mind is destroyed. They think the cause of all their suffering is in the other, and what that other has said about them, and are ignorant of the truth, that the root and cause of their suffering lies in their own readiness to believe a malicious report about another. The virtuous, those who have attained to true speech, and whose minds are sealed against even the appearance of malicious speaking, cannot be injured and disturbed about any malicious reports concerning themselves, and although their reputation may for a time be stained in the minds of those who are prone to suggestions of maliciousness, their integrity remains untouched, and their character unsoiled. For no one can be stained by the malicious deeds of another, but only by their own wrongdoing. And so, through all misrepresentation, misunderstanding, and insulting contempt, they are untroubled and unrevengeful. Their sleep is undisturbed, and their minds remain in peace. True speech is the beginning of a pure, wise, and well-ordered life. If you would attain to purity of life, if you would lessen the ignorance and suffering of the world, abandon falsehood and slander in thought and word, avoid even the appearance of these things, for there are no lies and slanders so deadly as those which are half-truths, and refuse to be a participant in malicious speaking by listening to it and entertaining it. Also, have compassion for the malicious speaker, knowing how they are binding themselves to suffering and unrest, for no liar can know the bliss of truth, no slanderer can enter the kingdom of peace. By the words which you utter is your spiritual condition declared. By these also are you finally and infallibly adjudged, for as the divine master of the Christian world has declared, by thy words shalt thou be justified, and by thy words shalt thou be condemned. Chapter 5. Equal-Mindedness. To be equal-minded is to be peaceful-minded, because you can't be said to have arrived at peace if you allow your mind to be disturbed and thrown off balance by appearances and circumstances. The wise are dispassionate, and meet all things with the calmness of a mind in repose and free from prejudice. The wise are not partisan, having put away worldly passion, and are always at peace with themselves and the world, not taking sides nor defending themselves, but sympathizing with all. The partisan is so convinced that their own opinion and their own side is right, and that all that goes contrary to them is wrong, that they can't think there is any good on the other opinion and the other side. They live in continual fever of attack and defense, and have no knowledge of the quiet peace of an equal mind. As an equal-minded being, you watch yourself in order to check and overcome even the appearance of worldly passion and prejudice in your mind, and by doing so you develop sympathy for others and come to understand their position and their particular state of mind. And as you come to understand others, you perceive the foolishness of condemning them and opposing yourself to them. In this way, a divine charity grows up in your heart which cannot be limited, but which is extended to all things that live and strive and suffer. When you are under the sway of worldly passion and prejudice, you are spiritually blind, seeing nothing but good on your own side and nothing but bad in the other. You cannot see anything as it really is, not even your own side. And not understanding yourself, you can't understand the hearts of others, and think that it is right that you should condemn them. In this way, a dark hatred for those who refuse to see with you and who condemn you in return grows up in your heart. You soon become separated from your fellow men and women and confine yourself to a narrow torture chamber of your own making. Sweet and peaceful are the days of the equal-minded, fruitful in good and rich in manifold blessings. Guided by wisdom, you avoid those pathways which lead down to hatred and sorrow and pain, and take those which lead up to love and peace and bliss. The occurrences of life do not trouble you, nor do you grieve over those things which are regarded by mankind as grievous, but which must befall all men and women in the ordinary course of nature. You are neither elated by success nor downcast by failure. You see the events of your life arrayed in their proper proportions, and can find no room for selfish wishes or vain regrets, for vain anticipations and childish disappointments. And how is this equal-mindedness, this blessed state of mind and life acquired? Only by holding the intention to overcome yourself, only through holding the intention to purify your own heart. Your intention calls down the grace, and the work itself is done by the higher. The purification of the heart leads to unbiased comprehension. Unbiased comprehension leads to equal-mindedness, and equal-mindedness leads to peace. The impure are swept helplessly away on the waves of passion. The pure guide themselves into the harbor of rest. The fool says, "I have an opinion." The wise go about their business. Chapter 6. Good Results. A considerable portion of the happenings of life comes to us without any direct choosing on our part, and such happenings are generally regarded as having no relation to our will or character, but as appearing coincidentally, as occurring without a cause. In this way, one is spoken of as being lucky, and another unlucky, the inference being that each has received something which they never earned, never caused. Deeper thought and a clearer insight into life convinces us, however, that nothing appears without a cause, and that cause and effect are always related in perfect adjustment and harmony. This being so, every happening directly affecting us is intimately related to our own will and character, is indeed an effect justly related to a cause having its seat in our consciousness. In a word, involuntary happenings of life are the results of our own thoughts and deeds. This, I admit, is not apparent on the surface. But what fundamental law, even in the physical universe, is so apparent? If thought, investigation, and experiment are necessary to the discovery of the principles which relate one material atom to another, in the same way they are imperative to the perception and understanding of the mode of action which relate one mental condition to another. And such modes, such laws, are known by the right doer, by those who have acquired an understanding mind by the practice of true actions. We reap as we sow. Those things which come to us, even though not by our own choosing, are by our own causing. The drunkard didn't choose the delirium tremens or insanity which overtook them, but they caused it by their own deeds. In this case, the law is obvious to all minds, but where it is not so obvious, it is true nonetheless. Within ourselves is the deep-seated cause of all of our suffering, the spring of all of our joys. Alter the inner world of thoughts, and the outer world of events will cease to bring you sorrow. Make the heart pure, and to you all things will be pure, all occurrences happy and in true order. Our life is good or bad, enslaved or free, according to its causation in our thought. For out of these thoughts spring all of our deeds, and from these deeds come equitable results. We cannot seize good results violently, like a thief, and claim them and enjoy them, but we can bring them to pass by setting in motion the causes within ourselves. Most strive for money, sigh for happiness, and would gladly possess wisdom, yet they fail to secure these things, while we see others to whom these blessings appear to come coincidentally and or gratuitously. The reason is that they have generated causes which prevent the fulfillment of their wishes and efforts. Each life is a perfectly woven network of causes and effects, of efforts or lack of efforts, and results. And good results can only be reached by initiating good efforts, good causes. As a doer of good actions who pursues sound methods, grounding on right principles, you will not need to strive and struggle for good results. They will be there as the effects of your righteous rule of life. You will reap the fruits of your own actions, and the reaping will be in gladness and peace. This truth of sowing and reaping in the moral sphere is a simple one, yet men are slow to understand and accept it. They have been told by a wise one that the children of darkness are wiser in their day than the children of light. And who would expect in the material world to reap and eat where you have not sown and planted? Or who would expect to reap wheat in a field where you had sown tares, and would fall to weeping and complaining if you did not? Yet this is exactly what most do in the spiritual field of mind and deed. They act malevolently and expect to get good from it, and when the bitter harvesting comes in all its ripened fullness, they fall into despair and bemoan the hardness and injustice of their lot, usually attributing it to the evil deeds of others, refusing to even admit the possibility of its cause being hidden in themselves, in their own thoughts and deeds. The children of light, those who are searching for the fundamental principles of right living, with a view to making themselves into wise and happy beings, must train themselves to observe this law of cause and effect in thought, word, and deed, as implicitly and obediently as the gardener obeys the law of sowing and reaping. They do not even question the law, they recognize and obey it. When the wisdom which they instinctively practice in their garden is practiced by men and women in the garden of their minds, when the law of the sowing of deeds is so fully recognized that it can no longer be doubted or questioned, then it will be just as faithfully followed by the sowing of those actions which bring about a reaping of happiness and well-being for all. As the children of matter obey the laws of matter, so let the children of spirit obey the laws of spirit. For the law of matter and the law of spirit are one. They are but two aspects of one thing, the outworking of one principle in opposite directions. If we observe right principles or causes, wrong effects cannot possibly accrue. If we pursue sound methods, no shoddy thread can find its way into our web of life. No rotten brick can enter into the building of our character to render it insecure. And if we do true actions, what but good results can come to pass? Because trying to say that good causes can produce bad effects is to say that nettles can be reaped from the sowing of corn. You, who order your life along the principled lines we have briefly discussed, will attain to such a state of insight and equilibrium as to render you permanently happy and perpetually glad. All your efforts will be seasonally planted, all of the issues of your life will be good, and though you may not become a millionaire, as indeed you have no desire to become such, you will acquire the gift of peace, and true success will wait upon you as its commanding master.